Hello and welcome back. In this video, we're going to talk about the difference between a constant and an immutable variable in Solidity. Let's begin by writing some codes. Constant var1. So when you try to cut this out, as you can see, it's giving us some errors. Uninitialized constant variable. Let's say 1. As you can see, now there are no more errors. What's happening is a constant variable has to be initialized. That is, it has to be given a value at the time of declaration. I have to give it a value as soon as I declare that variable. I can't say this and then intend to give it a value later on in the code. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. Let's create a simple variable. Simple var. As you can see, this is not giving us any errors because it allows us to declare the variable without giving it a value at the time of declaration. And we can always give it a value later. For example, when you create a function, let's say assign, let's say public, and then let's say simple var is equal to 1. Now, you can see we can create this simple variable right here without giving it any value and then assign it a value inside this function. Whereas you can't do that with constant variables. We always have to give them values as soon as we declare those variables. So I hope you are good on constant variables. Now, what are immutable variables and how do they differ? Now let's create a variable here and call it immutable variable, and we can call it var2. Sorry, let me be a little bit more descriptive here. Let's say constant var, and let's say immutable var. Perfect. Now, as you can see, immutable variables allow us to create them just like simple variables. They allow us to create them without initializing them with a value. But the difference is when I come here and try to change this immutable variable, let's say immutable variable is equal to this 2. When I try to give it a value inside a function, a regular function, it doesn't work. It says cannot write to immutable here. Immutable variables can only be initialized inline or assigned directly in the constructor. Perfect. Now, what does that mean? It says cannot write to immutable here. Immutable can only be initialized in line. It means can be initialized in line. That is when we declare it here. Now, this is perfect Solidity code. This is one of the options that immutable gives us. We can initialize an immutable variable when we declare it, just as constant variables require us to do. Now, that is one of the two options with immutable variables. Now, it gives the second option, or assign it directly in the constructor. Now, this takes us to the next thing we need to discuss about, and that is a constructor. Now, what is a constructor in Solidity? A constructor is a function that runs once. That is, it runs as soon as the contract is deployed. It runs once and only once. It doesn't run ever again. Let's try to create a constructor. Let's say constructor, and then give it this. As you can see, as I told you, a constructor is a function. But instead of using this keyword and then give it a name, we just use the keyword constructor and then give it put this brackets and then the curly braces, just as we have in a regular function. Now, a constructor, like I said, is a function that runs only once. That is when you deploy the contract. So we can assign an immutable variable a value here inside the constructor. For example, let's say immutable var is equal to, let's say 1. You see, this is perfect Solidity code. No errors, no warnings, no nothing. But if we uncomment this, you can see it doesn't work. We can only change an immutable variable inside a constructor, or we can only give it a value inside a constructor or at the time of declaration, that is inline. Whereas a constant variable must and has to be given a value as soon as it is declared inline. It doesn't accept a value any other place, not in a constructor, not in a regular function. So that is the difference. I hope you get it. Now, thank you. And if you have any issues, just drop a comment and I'll respond as soon as I can.